The practicalities of this are not going to be great.
Is that a little bit of leather going on there?
I'm here to pillage and conquer, innit?
Honestly, the OnlyFans account is going to be a meltdown.
It's just something I happen to have in stock. And it's nice because Jason's come as Quillian. Hello, friends, Romans and countrymen. Welcome to part 2 of 4 of season 2. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and also to write comments. If it's live, you might even get one of us here. James, you might get one of us here talking to you.
Oh, sorry, it'll be me.
It's only because he understands how to do the technology and Jason's hungover. So, I mean, it rules a lot of us out. So last time on Doctor Who and season 2, we looked at Planet of Giants and the Dalek Invasion of Earth, and we saw Planet of Giants 17 and Dalek Invasion of Earth 23 and a half. That will all be very exciting to you. I am Paul or P-Bal, and I'm joined by...
Hello, it's James.
And hello, it's Jason. Very fetching costume you've got on there, P-Bal.
Thank you. It has come straight from stock. It's a Daphne Dare original.
Signed by stars of the show, I'm no doubt as well.
It's not. I mean, I don't know if I'd wear it in front of stars of the show because they might see the star of my show, and I don't think that they're ready for it. Anyway, we're on to the third story, and it is Doctor Who and the Rescue. Who wants to introduce Doctor Who and the Rescue?
I'll make a start for us today. And for me, this is a lovely little 2-part story introducing us to the new companion, Vicki. And also sees the Doctor going back to a planet he has apparently been to before, the planet of Dido. And there he finds Vicki and Bennett stranded on a broken up spaceship that's crash landed while they're waiting for to be rescued actually from the Earth. And then there's an evil Dido that's running around called Quillian, if I've said that correctly. And that's at odds because the Doctor doesn't believe the inhabitants of the planet Dido to be evil. So lots of questions to be answered in what I think is quite a snappy little 2-part story, and one that's a bit of a favourite of mine.
Oh, is it?
Yes. I sense a slight disparaging tone there from James when he said that.
Well, yeah. I don't know. There's not a lot really I can add to that really, apart from it's like you say, it's a 2-parter. They come across Vicki and I think it's Bennett, isn't it? Who's the 2 people that are left over from this crash. Turns out there's a little bit more to it than that. But yeah, it's an odd one because you've got this. We talked about previously how the story had been reduced. The Giants have been reduced from 4 to 3. They were trying to put the extra one onto the Dalek story, and then they have this, which is a 2-parter introduction to Vicki, and it's a small, it's a little short stop, if you like. There isn't many characters in it. I can't say that this is one of my favorites, put it that way. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's like, it feels like it should be part of a bigger story rather than just this 2-episode. Here's Vicki. She's on this spaceship. Everybody's died. We better take her with us.
I think basically, and I like this, and I think I'm sort of with Jason. I wouldn't say like my top 10 or something, but I do enjoy watching it. I think it's fun, and I think David Whittaker's got the memo, so to speak, on the this is just introduced Vicki with a bit of peril. And do you know, I'm not going to be a hater on Susan, because I don't want to be casting that shadow. But Vicki is a breath of fresh air with this. She's got such a sparkle and an energy from the offset. I mean, she's from the opening scene. It's a level up, and whether that's because the character's been thought through slightly better in terms of quite where she's from and what she is, and as we go forward, she is Earth, but future Earth. So you have lots of lovely things about barbaric. Did you used to do this in the 60s and stuff like that? That's all quite sweet. But as a sort of a two-part, because I think if you'd gone straight into another story after the Dalek invasion and just pick someone up there, I think there would have been a bit of a kind of that was a big epic thing, and I think you need this little breather. It's not like things stop, but there's a little breather just to, I mean, because there's the scene at the start, isn't there, obviously, where Doctor Who sleeps through the landing, and they're like, he slept through the landing, you know, what's up with him, you know, is he all right? And there's a little bit of comedy, isn't there, when you can still hear them when they're in the time. There's little bit. So it's a two-part character piece, isn't it? That's what this is. And I mean, whether you can quite get on board with the melodrama of the belief that he wiped everyone out to cover his crime, and it's what it is. But it's nice. It's a nice little character piece, and there's lots of little bits about playing with your perception of what is bad. So Quillian, you think, is the bad guy, and it's just someone dressed up. Sandy, you would imagine, is to be some horrible monster, and Sandy isn't. Sandy's a little tame little vegetarian, and there's lots of nice little pieces there, I think.
And that, for me, is one of the nice things about this story, is you get a proper introduction to the character of Vicki. And you're right from the get-go, there's an energy there that, you know, if an actress bringing a different portrayal to a different role, there's an energy there straight away. And she's clearly wanting to make sure that, you know, she plays this really well and plays, and, you know, gives us that character really from the get-go in this. And I like the fact that we're given that chance to breathe, and that we're given that chance to know about the character, because if you think about this, we've not had anybody leave the show up until now. So this would have been as much of a change for the audience back then as it is for us watching it now. And I think giving her the proper breathing space to introduce the character in, I think, wasn't the wrong decision. You know, you could, some people would say that this is technically a 6-part because it is attached to the Romans on the back side of it. Possibly, could it be classed as all one big story? No, it was all done together. It was done in the same 6-week recording block, same director, same set designers, everybody worked on both these two shows. But I think it gave a good introduction to the character and gave us a little bit of a story around the side of it. So no, I'm not in the camp of not liking this one. I like this one a lot.
I mean, we talked about in the last recording, I think it was Pamela Franklin who played Jenny. She was originally going to be the companion that was going to be taken forward.
Pamela Franklin was someone they were going to cast as Jenny as a regular, because Anne Davies that actually plays her in the actual thing. Yeah, but then Verity Lambert didn't feel that was right, so they cast Maureen O'Brien. And to be fair, from what I read, Sydney Newman wanted her to cut her hair and dye it. So and she said, look, if you want that, then get Carol Ann back, because that's not me. And she does bring a new energy to the show. She does, you know, that character is her, you know, when you watch this episode, I just, for me, it just seems like the 2-episode introduction to her is a bit of fluff and nonsense for me. I find I watch this and I don't feel any sort of strong love for it. Just me. But you don't dislike it, though?
I don't dislike it. No, it's not that I dislike it, but I think, and I think I mentioned this before, when I used to collect like the VHS, or, you know, the episodes that I would I would look out for are the ones where the companions leave, or the Doctor regenerates, or new companions join. And it's I'd rather watch the Romans, because that's her full, first full story as a companion. This is I can see why some people think that they're linked, and it should have been all part of one story, because the end of this does link into the Romans, because they dematerialize on top of the cliff, and then you've got this gap between that shot at the end of episode 2 here and the start of the Romans, where they've been sort of living there for a number of weeks. So you kind of, she's had time to acclimatize to the TARDIS crew without us being there.
It is funny though, sometimes the linking of the rescue and the Romans is always like, so it's out, it came as a double pack of video, it's out on a DVD. So there is a sort of always this continual thing, but they are distinctly individual stories. I mean, yes, you have the cliffhanger, but then you have the cliffhanger out of the Romans into the web planet. I mean,
yeah,
it's how it is. I think it's just the mindset of the marketing that we always have. These are sort of production, joining us, like, they are individual stories. I mean, I have my came since on the VHS. My grand got me for Christmas '94. So 12-year-old P-Bal watches Christmas '94, and yeah, like this. It is just two-parters are a difficult thing, and if you try and cram too much into it, you don't satisfy it. If you don't put enough in, it feels like you've not put the effort. I think we've had a few. So I think Inside the Spaceship, Edge of Destruction, whatever you want to call it, it's a difficult two-parter because it's sort of playing on the one idea for almost an hour, and if you get bored or it doesn't work, it doesn't. Whereas there is a set story here, and there is it's not a complex story, but then that's not the and I suppose you can use it akin to maybe Rose. There's a story there, but the story is to introduce Rose.
Yeah, there's certainly enough going on around this from a two-parter perspective, because not only then have you got the introduction of Vicki, you've got the whole let's solve the mystery of why Corkillian is holding Vicki there and being quite sort of like, you can't go outside the ship, you can't do this, you can't do that. You have the Doctor and Ian in peril through the first episode, where they're working their way through the tunnels because, again, they've been sabotaged and the tunnel entry's been blown, and Barbara's been pushed over the cliff. And there is enough going on here, I think, to carry quite a straightforward two-part story. Admittedly, it all comes together when they all get back together in episode 2, and they very quickly solve the puzzle, and we get to find out exactly who he is and what he's been up to, which is a little bit of a big story. I mean, that was really distributed out in one line, essentially. But there's enough going on here to keep me quite happily sitting through this and looking at this. I mean, I kind of like two-part stories anyway, because you don't have to invest a huge amount of time into them. I mean, Sontaran Experiment's another good example of a two-part story that works really well in isolation on its own. And this is another one of those. So you're not going to have to invest too much into it. They're using it for character introduction, which is a good thing. And we're having a little bit of Saturday morning sort of entertainment at the same time, where you've got spears coming out of the wall and all the sort of trappings that you'd find in lots of other Doctor Who stories over the course of time. But I think this works.
I mean, they do reuse the music from the Daleks, and the Sand Beast is recording of Dalek dying, I think it is. So there's a bit of recycling going on in this story as well.
Poor Sandy's death, though. I mean, there's multiple things taken from poor Sandy's death. The noise in the death throes, and Barbara firing something with a flame that close to that bouffon. I mean, that is dangerous.
She was injured. It prematurely fired, so she was injured with that prop.
Yeah, it's quite a bit vicious, that one particular scene. And again, it almost feels a little bit out of character for Barbara as well, to be honest. Well, I think you said in one of our previous recordings for the first part of this season, her character's developed quite the way now from them coming on board at the beginning of season 1. And both her and Ian are now contributing quite a lot. I mean, there's a lovely little scene, just a lovely little bit just at the beginning of this story, where the doctor's, as you said, he slept through the landing, and he goes to ask Susan to open the doors, and Barbara steps in and goes, "I'll show me how to open the doors. I'll do that." And so therefore I think that's a character arc for Barbara, if you like, because I think she's come on in leaps and bounds, but it just fell out of character a little bit for her to raise a gun and shoot poor little Sandy, even though he might have looked like a vicious monster.
The Doctor and Barbara's relationship is really sweet, because having had that really hostile beginning, it just so works, because obviously Vicki then thinks that she's killed Sandy. He's like, you don't really think she's a murderer, do you? She's quite, and he's the one who's sort of saying, come on, Barbara's nice, leave her alone. And it's just nice that development is something that's kept going. It's sort of, again, not to be unkind on other seasons or whatever. If you look at 22 as we just did, the development of Doctor Who and Perry, where you think by the end of the season they'd all be best friends and there wouldn't be any animosity, they're still sparking. It's still written that way. Whereas this, they've had that moment at the start of admittedly more episodes, but they've had that and it's grown just really quite warm and nice.
No, most definitely.
I was like, they're all leaving me hanging now.
No, most definitely. I absolutely agree with you. I think, again, the same can be said for Ian's character, has come a long way as well. But I think her and the Doctor, you see that develop. You see that sort of relationship starting to develop at the beginning of the Marco Polo 7-part story in season 1. And then slowly but surely, Barbara wins more and more of his trust, to the point where, we're clearly heading further on in this season to two more of our main characters departing. But I think it's nice that Barbara's now given a chance to shine a little bit more so. And again, I think the dynamics have changed. As you come into this story, it is the start of the new recording block now. So they have had a break. They've been away. So all of the regulars are on pretty good form as you come into this. But the Doctor Who is now going to start to go in a slightly different direction as we go through the rest of season 2. They're still going to be ambitious, but they're going to take it in a slightly different direction. And this is probably a good opportunity for both those two characters, both Ian and Barbara, just get that little bit more, step to the front a little bit more, because they were, if you like, the subsidiary characters to the Doctor and Susan all the way through season 1.
And also, you get the magic of a new character coming in that gives it an injection of seeing it all through their eyes, rather than it being, we all know what the situation is, we all know what the TARDIS is, we all know that it lands or it doesn't land. You can't. So it just gives it a little injection that you sort of need, as much as you like to hold on to the characters for as long as you can. Bringing someone in just gives it a different dynamic and a new lift, I think.
You see. Barbara and Ian are separated quite a lot in the next stories. It's particularly the next one, where it's the Doctor and Vicki, and then the other two main characters are separated and go their own sort of way. And you see that stronger Barbara coming out more and more as we get towards the end of the season. This was one of the highest rated Doctor Who episodes. It was in the top 10 of the most watched episodes, which for the time was huge. So on the back, I mean, the Daleks were very, very popular, and that popularity stayed during this two-parter when they introduced Vicki.
But Doctor Who and Tanny, as it was almost called.
Yeah, it was. And then Tanny ends up
Tanny, yeah.
Tanny ends up being a character in the next story because they kept the name, but yeah, it was going to be Doctor. But
this becomes the template to a degree for what we will have now for years and years to come when you introduce a new character companion into the series, and you will get this whole period of introduction, whether they're in a story as you lead through it or they join or whatever. If you like, this is another one of those ones where I said earlier, they're experimenting a lot more. So, they're bringing a new character in. So I think the fact they've given two episodes over to help to highlight that fact, I certainly don't think detracts for me from this story.
The strange plot point that I would say is that they try and make sure that the rescue ship will never land. They destroy the transmitter and all that sort of stuff. You've got to say, well, the rescue ship has obviously made a big old effort to journey to come and save all these people because they don't know how many people are dead or not dead.
Yeah.
But surely just out of curiosity as to what might have happened to all the people that would have been, they would land. They wouldn't just like, transmitter's gone, bugger, doesn't matter. The transmitter's broken down. We better land and see whether they're all right because the transmitter's not working anymore. The two that we do see from the survivors of their race, I think it's just those last few minutes, isn't it, where they try to sort of wind that plot up, where you go, not sure that quite makes sense, but it's fine. Doctor Who's off on another adventure, off down a hill. It's fine.
I think there's a great. I do very much enjoy the scene where the Doctor is in the hall, the Great Hall or whatever they call it, and he's waiting for Quillian to turn up. And there's that wonderful shot. The Doctor stood to the sort of front of the set, and Quillian's coming in at the back there. Again, I just think the way that was shot was really, really well done. And then that whole interchange between them during that scene, I think, is also quite well done as well. So the Doctor gets a chance to shine in this one. Alongside it, everyone's getting a chance to step to the front of the camera for a bit, which is good, as well as introducing the new companion. And
he's quite hands-on, isn't he? This is one of those fight sequences where, Hartnell seems to be having a whale of a time. It's like, well, I'm gonna take you on. Obviously, the end. The Didonians, is it? I don't know what you call them. They come in and sort of rescue him, but he's having a good old scrap up until that point.
I think what I would say, and we probably haven't said it enough actually, because he when they do the polls, don't they, of your favourite Doctor and all that sort of stuff, William Hartnell's always, and I think so unfairly, near the bottom. He's always bubbling sort of third from bottom or something. But he's bloody brilliant. And I mean, he's consistently brilliant throughout all, even towards the end when you get to, as we did 10th Planet Smugglers, and he's not entirely well. He's still so charismatic and in control. I think I didn't sort of pull out on Dalek Invasion. I should have. The bit where he confronts the Daleks the first time when they come out of the river, and he's just like, "Who are you? Who are you to question my life?" And he's so in control and so on the level. And he is the star of the show. He is Doctor Who, and he's amazing as a lead. And I think this is another thing that, like Jason, the Quillian scene is brilliant. And he's such an incredible Doctor, and I don't think people give him enough credit for making the show, for being so bloody brilliant, and being the benchmark for what followed from everyone after.
And he was also very, very proud to be the Doctor. I mean, this part to him meant so much. And, for him to have to step away from it in the end through ill health, I think he would have gone on for a lot longer had his health allowed him to, because this was, a big thing for William Hartnell to have landed this role at this time, at this point in his career. So, I think he's absolutely bought into it all the way through. And there isn't a bad story for me that he actually appears in. And you're right, I don't think he kind of gets the love that he should have.
I mean, guest cast wise, there's Ray Barrett, and he's great. I mean, that's not derogatory. There's not masses of people to roll through here. But I mean, Ray Barrett is great, and he does do well as the both parts. I don't think, unless you've seen the cast or whatever, you necessarily work out that he is both of them.
No, I think, didn't they write someone else's name in as their?
So they used the pseudonym Sydney. Yeah, pseudonym Sydney Wilson.
Yeah,
a bit of an anagram at the time.
So they had a surprise reveal at the end of it.
If it had been Vicki, imagine.
Well, that would have scuppered her chances of going on board the TARDIS, wouldn't it?
She played him all along like a right kipper.
She pulled the mask off, and it's Carol Ann Ford. Surprise!
Susan's come back hiding. You think you can double lock the doors on me? So, do we have any last exciting facts on Doctor Who and the Tanny?
This was the first time that the dematerialization sound was played over the TARDIS rematerializing. So, you know, the bit at the end where it rematerializes in the on the cliff. It's the first time that it was overlaid on that, because previously it just kind of, you heard the sound, but then it just appeared. So there was this notion, because the thud doesn't come in till much later on, but in this point there was the sound effect was laid over it, either dematerializing or rematerializing. One of them was the first one. Vicky's surname is never revealed. She's one of a few characters where in the TV show it is not revealed.
No, they credit her as being Pallister, don't they, on a lot of things, but they don't call it her.
No,
like Polly Wright. Polly isn't actually Polly Wright. That's just something they dragged up from a document somewhere.
Yeah. No, that was it.
And just one more to add then, James. This is Dennis Spooner's first story as script editor, as he was taking over from David Whittaker. And this is where I think you start to see a slightly different direction, with the different script editor always going to bring their own stamp to it. And that will soon become very apparent when we move into the next story, the direction that we're going to start to head in, I think.
So let's get some scores on the door.
Oh, go on, I'll go first. Let's get my score out of the way. And I don't dislike it. It is what it is, and I scored it 5.5. I knew you'd react like that.
James.
There we go. We're not in sync on this one.
I'm going to push my score up to a 10 now, just to cancel that out.
Okay, I'll go next. So 2 episodes. Small.
I'm scoring it too.
No, I'm not.
I watch this every week. It's a favourite. 2.
Small but perfectly formed, I think, this little 2-part serves as an introduction to Vicki, gives the regulars a chance to have something to work out as well through the 2 parts. You don't have to think too hard, and you know it's an easy piece of television to watch. For me, absolutely has to be 7.5.
This is getting a little bit unpleasant. It has to be said. I also scored it 7.5.
Oh, you two are so in sync today.
I think haven't all our season 2 scores been the same so far?
No.
Oh, it's okay then.
I mean, it's bad, but it's not dire.
No, okay. It's worth a 7.5, definitely.
Yeah, it's above average, but it's not like an outstanding classic. But it's lovely. It is. It's beautifully formed. It's lots of lovely character, lots of lovely performance. Doesn't outstay. James is wrong. Put that in the comments below, everyone. Troll him. What was that reaction? What was that?
I can take it. It's fine.
So anyway, that ends Doctor Who and the Rescue on 20.5 points.
Still
Hashtag justice for the rescue. Anyway, we move along, and this was such a comfortable choice of costume because we've now got the Romans. So who wants to start us on the Romans?
Go on, I will start, because, you know, after the last two episodes, this for me is a complete change in tone, in shift, everything. The Romans, I call it Carry On Doctor Who, because it is a Doctor Who comedy, and it's you don't know how much for laughs it was supposed to be played, but it is so akin to sort of Carry On film or Up Pompeii, that sort of era of comedy, and all of the characters in this have all got their own sort of plot line. So you've got the doctor who ends up with Vicki going to Rome to play the lyre. Is it lyre?
Liar.
But he sort of like says, unless you've got, really sensitive hearing and impeccable taste, you're not going to be able to hear it. And he's there literally plucking air. And all these people are going, "Ooh, this is amazing." You've got Barbara and Ian, who are sold into slavery. Barbara ends up being chased around by Nero in some sort of, like I say, it's like an episode of Up Pompeii. She's constantly trying to avoid him and his wife that keeps walking in and sort of going, "What's going on here?" Ian is sold into slavery on a galleon, and that sinks, and then he ends up as a gladiator. Vicki ends up in the kitchen. So you have all these sort of things that happen to them over this story, but then they all sort of come together in the end. And you were just talking about Hartnell, and here for me is probably my favorite Hartnell episode, because he gets to play a different character. There's comedy, there's action. He gets into a fight with the assassin, and he has these brilliant scenes where he's really playing up to his comedy roots. There are characters in this, and I'm sure we'll talk about, that come from Carry On films or went on to be in Carry On films, which is why it has that feeling of it. And it was originally going to be a parody of another film, but they were filming Carry On Cleo at the same time, so they decided to shift the story to more around Nero than sort of Cleopatra. But there's so many things I love in this, and you just have the sort of farcical scenes of the doctor keeps missing Barbara, just within sort of like seconds of the doctor walking down a corridor, Barbara's being chased by Nero, who's after a bit of fun, and you see these characters sort of cross so close to each other, not knowing where the other people are, and I just love this.
Never would have guessed.
I think the funny thing with it being a comedy is that there's also still a lot of very dark stuff in this. There's some quite brutal bits.
There is.
And also it comes back to that thing of Barbara again being one who's got the knowledge of it. I mean, as a history teacher at school, she's got very in-depth knowledge of a lot of eras of British history, Earth history. But we'll move on from that. But there is that point, isn't it, where she says to Ian, do you know how the Romans treated their slaves? It's like, there is the genuine parallel. She's like, she knows what this situation means. So she's gone from the isn't it funny, we're at the market and we've got the opulent lifestyle and this is just experiencing Rome from the nice side, to shit's got real now. This is what happens to slaves, and this isn't going to be good. So it does really play off the two levels, and I think it manages to do it really well. The comedy is, there's a lot of slapstick, there's a lot of Ray Cooney kind of farce play, and there's a lot of that, but it doesn't feel like it jars with the dark bits and the some of the more dramatic elements. In
some respects, it helps to balance the story really well, because when you think about this year, we've got something of an oddity here, really, because up until now, historicals have been played pretty much straight down the line. The least I say about the Reign of Terror, the better, I think. Look back and see what I scored that one on my previous video on that one. But you've got here a first, because you're playing the historical, but you're putting an element of comedy into it. The Roman Empire is pretty brutal, and this isn't, whichever way you cut this, if they played this really straight, this wouldn't have been a great a great story. It would have been almost a little bit like the Reign of Terror, where they played it absolutely to the nth degree of the drama of the time of that was set. And you know, potentially Dennis Spooner learned a lesson from that. So injecting the humor into this was probably one way of lifting what is quite a heavy duty story in some respects, because, you know, the slavery aspect of it, you know, there's a lot of people get stabbed in this. You know, we've talked about this in other seasons, but, you know, Nero himself is quite merciless and doesn't mind just stabbing the odd guard here and there wherever he fancies it. And therefore, you've got a bit of an odd one here, because it's a good historical and it's a good story, and the comedy lends to it, but there is a part of it at times where I feel we've crossed over a little bit too much into the slapstick. And I think potentially I would want to see some of that, or I would have liked to have seen some of that potentially played down a little bit. But, you know, The Road to Rome might be a dangerous one. It was a difficult script, I'm sure, for, you know, to try and realize. And you've got a cast of thousands here as well, it feels like, because there are so many extras and so many people in the cast. Look at the previous story, there was hardly anybody in that one. This is like the cast of 1,000 faces, it feels like. So it's a good story. It's not my favorite of the season, but I think, you know, it's an interesting play to bring humor into the historical.
I mean, Derek Francis was a friend of Jacqueline, so he wanted to be in the show, and this is just a perfect part for him. You know, he, like you say, he's quite quick to dispatch people, but at the same time he's this brandy old emperor who's, you know, after a bit of fun as well. You know, he can go from that very serious, very sort of, you know, dictator like, to being this sort of, you know, flirtatious, chasing Barbara around and, you know, bestowing her with gifts and things. You know, watch out for that gold bracelet, might come important later. But, you know, it just, I like, he is standout in this. William Hartnell just seems to be enjoying doing something lighter, doing comedy, doing, you know, playing this character other than Doctor Who, and it, for me, I don't think it veers too much that way. I think it's perfectly pitched in the seriousness of elements, and you get that from Barbara talking about history and all the things that, you know, that she's aware of, and that all starts to happen. But again, you have the, you know, subplots around trying to assassinate Nero. You've got Nero trying to destroy Rome and build new Rome. So you've got those elements, and the Doctor accidentally gives him the idea to burn Rome to the ground. You know, and we've seen that before well, not seen it at this point, but we've seen it in other stories where the Doctor accidentally causes something to happen in history. But I love watching this. It's just something that it just ticks along at a nice pace. Lots for each of the individual characters to be doing and interacting with other people. You know, Vicki spends quite a bit of time with the Doctor. She's already established as part of the crew, because they've had this sort of 6 weeks where they've been living at this Roman villa. You know, they've just been enjoying this opulent lifestyle, and now they're having to, you know, deal with reality. And she plays quite a good, you know, Vicki, again, you know, she swaps the goblets around. She realizes that there's poison in it, you know, so she's working in the kitchen. She kind of goes underneath the radar for a bit and spots what's going on, and you know, and again, really good interaction with everything else that's going on.
It's line, I think I've just poisoned Nero. It's a nice understatement. I like that one.
It's a fabulous line.
We also get Antira, though, don't we? That pre-Antlers in Rebos operation, she's the poison. She's the chief poisoner. So there she is without her antlers.
It's quite interesting that they all end up in the same place, but Barbara and Ian and the Doctor and Vicki, they don't actually meet up with each other. until you get right back to the very end of the story. So that it is like two separate stories that play throughout this, which I think is very clever scripting.
It is, and like I say, that it is like a farce because they keep crossing paths and not seeing each other. You know, it would have been very different if the Doctor had spotted Barbara really early on, you know, and realized what was happening to her. But she's left really to defend herself against this man who's showering affections on her one minute and then threatening to kill people the next. But this is, you know, we were just talking about this in the previous story. This is where Barbara really does take center stage. She, you know, she's in a lot of this story, you know, and she just, you know, she knows how to handle him. She gives him a bit of a run around, and she plays up to it at points. But you know, she is very strong woman in this story, and you know, she doesn't necessarily need the Doctor to rescue her. You know, they keep passing, but when she's reunited with Ian, you know, there is that relief, and that gets that part of the story moving again.
Ian gets to be the action hero, doesn't he? He gets to do his Lancelot bit, doesn't he? He gets to do this slave rebellion and the sword fighting and all that sort of stuff. So it's a good, you know, boys' own bit for William Russell in this one. So I think everyone's got their own little bit. I mean, his fight isn't as much fun as the aforementioned Hartnell and Barry Jackson, isn't he? Has to fight with. Yeah. He's like, is he taught by the mountain mauler of Montana or something?
Yeah, which was an ad lib. He just made that up. But he the look of joy on Hartnell's face, though, he's like a kid at Christmas. He's like, oh, you know, it's just like, it's so funny to watch. You know, because he does play the old frail old man, and you know, we were just talking, you know, previous stories where he tripped over bits of scenery and was out for a week, and then suddenly he's leaping over, you know, things and you know, attacking an assassin. But it is, you can see there's a delight on his face because he's enjoying it so much.
And the scene he really enjoys, you can see it as well, as when he's playing the lyre, and he's doing it with no sound. So he's there, and you can just tell from the way he's reacting in the scene how much he's really enjoying just having some fun, I think, with the Doctor in this story. And
the audience, you see them looking at it, you know, and like this, just like acting to nothing, but it's such a lovely scene, and he's just there going like this, and there's this sort of dramatic pause, and then he goes bling, like that, and they're all like clapping. He's just having fun. It's great.
There's a great end shot, isn't there, as well? Chris Barry does a great shot playing the lyre as Rome burns. That's nicely realised as an end shot. I like the model effect actually of Rome burning. That all works so well. Fire in the studio is always very haphazard, but it's nice. I think it's all well shot.
And there's a lot of fire actually at the end, isn't there? They're all running around the studio, all with lit batons, and you just think there's not a lot to this set. This thing's going to go up if we're not careful.
Barbara's hair.
Yes.
I'm on constant peril for Barbara's booth. The amount of spray that must have gone into it. You don't want naked flames near her.
No, you definitely don't. But I agree with you with that end shot. You know, you've got that silhouette of Rome burning, and then you've got the cut across to Nero, and it ties up. Obviously, it's quite nice because this is obviously a proper historical. It's based on a proper historical event that happened. They've injected the comedy into it, obviously, to lift the script, because, as I said, it's a bloody time in reality. But there are some nice visuals in here as well. It's nicely realised on the budget that they've got.
I mean, there were. Oh, go on.
I know. I was going to say, I do wonder how much of a reaction it is to previous historicals that they thought would it be more engaging for. I mean, we do get a very historical coming up, but is it the comedy aimed to make it more accessible because they like the space adventure, kids like the space adventure? Like, would they be happier with an educational story that's a bit more jovial?
I think there was a big debate at this point as to whether or not historicals were the way to go. You know, especially as you had the Dalek mania going on at this point, and you know, those kind of stories were very, very popular. So there was a concern that maybe the historicals weren't as popular and maybe they should be fewer. And we know, you know, throughout the history of Doctor Who, that debate has happened a number of times where historicals have literally just sort of come to an end, but then they've come back, and in some cases quite successfully, and others not. But I don't know. I think for me it's enhanced by the comedy in this. I think if it didn't have the comedy in it, it would, you know, it would be pretty brutal story potentially if the, you know, all of these characters didn't have a comedy aspect. You know, the whole thing with Barbara and Nero, for example, if that wasn't played to comic effect, that would be quite tough, depending on how much they've dialed that up. So I think the comedy effect works, while at the same time still educating ish.
I think it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because, you know, you've got to get the story across, and you've got to do it in obviously you've got a story to tell. So you're quite right. It's a ghastly period in history. I think there's always the danger, though, in Doctor Who when you bring an element of humor in like this, and you're basing the story around it, it's either going to fall flat or it's going to work tremendously. For me, I like the story, but I find at times I just find the humor just a little bit overbearing at times in this, and that's just my own personal preference. I can see why they've done it. I can see how they've done it. I think it's been done well. But the historicals had a place in Doctor Who, and you're right, they were looking to try and phase them out at the time. I'm glad they stuck with them, because they had a part to play still in Doctor Who's history. It was, I suppose, an interesting experiment. Dennis Spooner had written The Reign of Terror, so that didn't have anything in there. Obviously, this does have that in there, and he's written this story. And obviously, the way they're going to take Doctor Who from here is going to play it a little bit more lighthearted at times anyway. I don't know. I'm one of those that's going to. I'm a bit of a traditionalist with my historicals. I kind of like them to be presented in a certain way. It is fun, but I just don't know at times if it's just a little bit too OTT.
I can probably see what you mean by some of the. It's difficult to strike that balance between it being a joke and you play it straight and you take a joke from it, or you play the joke to the back of the audience, and and maybe within this there might be points where it would have been a bit more double-edged to play both. I mean, I think Derek Francis at the heart of it as Nero is so megalomaniacal and overbearing and odious that actually it's so pitch perfect throughout. Really, he's every bit as monstrous and huge as he needs to be, and I think there's a lot of other straight parts around him, I think, which help enhance that. I think
Neropolis is one of the names that he's thinking of giving the new Rome once he's burnt it down, which I think was, again, that's just a little funny addition. Yeah, I think you're right. I think broadly it lands. I just think there are one or two moments in there for me that I think, is this just gone too far the wrong way? Bit too much silent movie or slapstick or Carry On. Whereas I'm not entirely convinced there's a place for that necessarily in Doctor Who.
I thought we'd be up for a Carry On, Jason. I thought you got that vibe.
I thought so.
There's a time and a place for it.
I mean, this season it's got quite a few Carry On alumni in it.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say, Derek Francis was in Carry On Doctor. You've got Peter Diamond, who was also in Carry On films. We know Will Hartnell was was in one as well. You know, we've got characters coming up later on that were in Doctor Who's in Carry On. So there is a sprinkling of that. There are some great comic performances in this.
Patty Jakes is the Animus. No, so wrong.
Wouldn't be able to tell. There'd be too much Vaseline.
Kenneth Williams is a Dalek in the Chase. There's one in each week.
And if they're not, they are now.
Yeah.
Barbara Windsor was originally going to be the naughty nun in the Time Meddler, and they couldn't get her because she was filming, so they got Peter Butterworth to be the meddling monk instead.
Oh, lots of spoilers going out here.
I've been on the same dark web that James has been on for his facts. Do we have any facts on Doctor Who and the Romans?
We've gone through them. The ones that I had, we've covered them.
I'm going to give another shout out to Ray Cusick again. I'm a big fan of his work, and I think in every story that we've reviewed that I think he's been involved in, I've probably mentioned it every time, so it's obviously coming across that I am. But what he manages to do in this story, on the budgets that they had, you know, there are so many sets that they effectively have to use to get through this story. So not only have you got a big cast, but you've got large demands on the budget. So, you know, you've got sets as diverse as the Roman villa that they start off in. You know, you've got obviously the Road to Rome set. You've got the in the bowels of the ship with the oars, and you know, you've got obviously the palace and the arena and it's just what I think what he manages to do on a very shoestring budget is very, very good. And again, I think that, you know, it's as much about the sets and the direction, and Chris Barry's a great director. It's as much about the sets and the direction for me as it is about the actual script and the actors that are in it as well. So, but I've got to say, this again is just rich with good, strong visual, even though it's completely studio based throughout.
Ironically, Ray Cusick didn't like his designs for this. He didn't want to do historicals, so this is his only stab at them. But yeah, apparently didn't like it.
Well, I'm surprised. Well, even if he didn't have any interest in it, I still think those sets are worthy of any TV drama that was out at the time.
So, are we going to head to a score? Who's going first then on the Romans?
Or go on, I will go first. So I think you probably know. I enjoyed this episode, and so it gets a regal thumbs up from me, and I scored it a lofty 9.
What, like the chap from EastEnders?
Yeah, he was in it too.
Do you know, I thought he could well have been. He was a quark in the 3rd episode, I think, wasn't he?
He was.
Okay.
We've got to stop reading that dark web.
Yeah, we have to. Okay, I'll go next with my score then. So, look, this is pretty good Doctor Who. It's not an up there classic for me. I like historicals. I like historicals to have a good story behind them. This has got that. As I've said, I think the humor's a little overplayed. Great cast, great sets, but it isn't a go-to or a favorite, and it's not one I'm going to sit there and watch fairly regularly. And I'll be against the grain a little bit with my score, but as I said, I think there's a place for humor in Doctor Who. And for me, I just don't think it landed as well as I would probably have liked it to have done for me on a rewatch. Obviously, Hartnell's on fine form. You know, I'd love to be able to give a score for all the positives, but I've come in on a score, and I'll be passing a judgment of 6.5 on the Romans.
It's tense, isn't it? So, question is, do you think I've sided towards James or Jason on this one?
I think you've gone in the middle.
That's it now. I'm Johnny Average now. I'm like, whatever you are, both. I'm just straight down the middle, so I can't be criticised for it.
No, we don't want that.
I gave Doctor Who and the Romans, Doctor Who Slave Traders, I gave it 8.
Ooh.
I think it's a pretty good. Pretty good. That's a really good score. It's a really good. I really enjoy watching the Romans. I just think those two together. I mean, they're not two interlinked stories, but I just love both of them. I love the video sound. It's just that they're a good run. I can happily put those on as a just let it run and watch all 6. Which means, I mean, we're at a halfway point on the season. There's 5 more to go. 4 down, 5 to go. So we're almost at the halfway point. So in last place currently with 17 is Planet of Giants. Then we've got The Rescue on 20.5. And our joint leaders on 23.5, Dalek Invasion of Earth and the Romans. They're tying for victory.
That's exciting.
Who would have thought Nero would have been tying with the Daleks? Well, I am going to ask everybody to like, subscribe, share, and put things in the comments below so I can get out of this get up. I mean, come on, folks. Anyway, so thank you very much, gentlemen.
Pleasure as always.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So we shall see you again shortly for part 3.